Okay, let's preview the Women's Rugby World Cup that takes place between the 22nd of August and the 27th of September here in England. We have four pools of four nations each. Pool A for me looks like the pool of death, personally. I feel very, very sorry for the nations in Pool A. And Pool D looks like a pool of death. Um, England and New Zealand are expected to make the final. However, I think Canada are dark horses to go on a long run as well. They've got a very good women's setup. Uh, and then you've got Pool D with France, Italy, and South Africa in it. I mean, that just looks tasty because a big nation there is going to fail to get out of the pool stage, much like Pool A. So in Pool A, we have Australia, England, the hosts, and joint favourites with New Zealand, Samoa, and the USA. Now, the US have also got a very good women's setup as well. Canada, the US, lately Canada's been edging that for some time, but the US have a very, very good women's setup, and they have a very good sevens program as well. So with Pool A, I think England are favourites to get out of that. That is what is expected. They are the host nation. They've been dominant in the Six Nations for some time. Australia and USA is the match that I'm really looking forward to see because that will decide basically second place. Look, Samoa have made it there. We've got to give the Samoans credit for making the World Cup. Now, a lot of the Samoan talent at times has played for Australia at some point at youth level or New Zealand, so they've got some talented players, the Samoans. But have they got the actual structures in place and the depth in place to really compete against the other three nations? It's going to be a fun one. I mean, Australia could throw up an upset. England USA is going to be quite an interesting Test match as well in the pool stages. But it's going to be between Australia and the US for second place in that group. Bonus points, I think, are going to be crucial. So every team is going to be, lining up Samoa to try and get some bonus points as well. That's a tasty one. It is a pool of death, and with the situation facing rugby union in Australia right now, I mean they have got a very good sevens program. But a lot of the rugby union talent has now switched to the NRLW. They've been lured away by the growth of women's rugby league in Australia, and that's going to be a really interesting one to see how they match up. It really is. The Australians have lost a lot of talent to rugby league domestically, so it's going to be a really interesting one. England and the USA, I think, will be the top two personally, but we shall see what Australia and the US cook up in their head-to-head, because that's going to be fun. Pool B is Canada, Fiji, Scotland and Wales. Fiji obviously have a fantastic sevens programme. Canada are the powerhouse from North America. Scotland and Wales, I mean, there's a lot of discussion around the strength of rugby union in Wales at the moment as well, and the issues that the Welsh union are facing financially, and the issues that the sport is facing in Wales. On the head-to-head, Scotland against Wales, that's going to be a fun little match-up with two home nations. Scotland, I think, are going to edge that. Canada, for me, are favourites to get out of this pool, and they are, for me, also dark horses to potentially make the final. They have that ability within them. They've got a great women's programme. They've been very, very good for many, many years. They're one of the top-ranked nations in the world. So let's not kid ourselves. The Canadians have a very, very good setup, and a lot of the Canadian women actually play over here in England. Fiji, Scotland's going to be quite an interesting one because Scotland have obviously been building slowly in the Six Nations. They're more competitive, and Fiji with their fantastic sevens programme, that's going to be fun. Of course, a lot of the Fijian players have either played for Australia or New Zealand as well at various levels in their development. So that's going to be a really fun matchup. Wales, I think Welsh rugby at the moment is in a very dark place, but the Scotland-Wales match could be fun. There could be an upset there. That could be a really tasty encounter. But for me, I think the Canadians are favourite to get out. It's all about who finishes second. And again, bonus points are going to prove crucial because we could see some very, very close games in this pool with Canada favourites, and it's a battle for second place. Pool C, which looks like the most one-sided pool of the lot, is New Zealand are in there, but you've got Ireland, Japan and Spain. New Zealand obviously are going to get out of this pool. It's a question of how they can manage their squad and manage injuries should any injuries occur. Ireland, Japan and Spain, I think Ireland have declined over the last couple of years. There's been some issues with the Ireland women's setup, although it is still a strong setup. Some of their performances in the Six Nations, they've dropped off a little bit in their performances in recent years. Japan and Spain, they're developing nations. Rugby in Spain is growing quite rapidly. And a lot of the Spanish players probably play across the border in France as well. They've also got a very good sevens program. Japan, obviously, they've hosted the Men's World Cup not that long ago, and rugby in Japan is actually quite a popular sport. They've got a lot of player depth, ironically. So that's going to be a real fun, unpredictable pool to look at. It really is. There's a lot of unpredictability for who's going to finish second there. New Zealand should comfortably get out of the pool. And I think that could be a problem for New Zealand, not getting properly tested by some of the weaker nations at the pool stage. Whereas in Pool A and Pool B, there's some struggles there. There's going to be some titanic struggles in Pool A and Pool B. I think New Zealand, this is an issue with how they've seeded some of the nations. With a very, very competitive Pool A, a reasonably competitive Pool B, and Pool D looking really competitive as well, with three really strong nations in there. I think New Zealand, this could actually hurt them a little bit. Because they're coming up against much weaker opposition. Although Ireland aren't weak opposition, they have faltered in recent years. Japan and Spain is going to be fun just to see, how they perform at this level and what they can build for the future. That's going to be quite fun. And it is, again, another pool where it's battle for second place, and those bonus points are going to prove crucial. So let's say Ireland get off to a wobbly start against Japan and Spain. Could they get a losing bonus point or a try bonus point against New Zealand? Could they actually do something there? Again, that could prove a little bit crucial. Pool D is an interesting one because you've got Brazil. They've actually got a very good sevens program, and they are developing the men's game and the women's game at 15 aside. Obviously, the Rio Olympics is where rugby made its debut, so they've obviously invested into their rugby programs over the years. France, Italy and South Africa. This is going to be a really tasty one. This is another pool of death. France and Italy, they've got a pretty... France, while they have the better record against Italy, that's going to be a very, very competitive match. And of course, rugby in South Africa is a religion, regardless if you're male or female. Pool D is going to be very hard to predict. France, I think, for me, are the favourites to get out of that pool top. But, again, bonus points are going to prove crucial. Squad management is going to prove crucial. And I think the France-Italy game is going to be tasty. Italy have actually got a very strong women's setup. They shouldn't be discounted by the French. And South Africa, they've got a very, very decent structure as well. And rugby union in South Africa is a religion. For me, though, I think France and Italy are the two nations most likely to get out of Pool D. But for one of the weaker groups, pools, should I say, that is going to be really fun. Really fun. Now, when we get to the knockout stages, that's a completely different kettle of fish. I'm predicting what nations are going to get out. I think Pool A is possibly the pool of death because a big nation is going home at the pool stage. Pool B is going to be fun. Canada are favourites for that, but they're going to be tested by the other nations in the pool. There's going to be defensive tests for the Canadians, but they have a very, very strong setup, and they are the third best nation in the world consistently. So Canada are in a very strong position to go on and be a dark horse. New Zealand, I think, have the easiest run to the knockout stages. They are pre-tournament favourites alongside England. Canada are dark horses. And then Pool D. Pool D is a very unpredictable one because I actually think three of the nations are very evenly matched. Very evenly matched with France, Italy and South Africa. And again, another reasonably big nation on women's rugby union, international stage is going to go home. There's going to be a couple of very disappointed nations, of which much is expected going forward. And I can see Australia being vulnerable. I can see France potentially being vulnerable. I think New Zealand. I think the weakness of their pool doesn't actually help them because it doesn't necessarily test them in the defensive side of the game as much as some of the other pools will test the other top nations a little bit more, where they've actually got to defend for lengthy phases. They've got to be under pressure at times in games where the opposition are going to have ball and territory and give it a crack. So this is a very interesting dynamic about how the nations have been seeded. Now, as I say, the tournament runs from the 22nd of August to the 27th of September, so in about 2 months' time the final will be held. It is being hosted by England. I think what I find very interesting is, I wouldn't say the lack of promotion, but very little promotion at the moment. I've seen a couple of adverts with a couple of the tournament sponsors, obviously, have got their advertising campaigns up and running. But I am a bit surprised by the limited amount of promotion at this stage. I think World Rugby could have done a little bit more to build the promotion aspect and interest aspect. I think earlier than what they have, and ramp it up. I mean, they've still got about 3.5, 4 weeks until the tournament does kick off. But I would expect a bit more in regards to promotion aspects. Trying to drive ticket sales and merchandise sales and more advertising, and that's on World Rugby and the organisers. But it looks likely that we're going to have a fun tournament. And look, a lot of people are predicting an England-New Zealand final. I think Canada could be a dark horse, and the other nations, it's going to be for them building and growing the game and building for the future. I mean, look, nations like Samoa and Brazil and Spain, well, they've definitely grown the game, and in the Pacific Island nations, I mean that a lot of the Samoan players and the Fijian players have played at some point in Australia or New Zealand. They've been part of Sevens programs. Fiji has got a fantastic, rugby culture with their Sevens program and their 15s program as well. But these lesser nations are building for the future. They're trying to grow the game. And we have, obviously we have this debate about the Men's World Cup as well, with the Tier 2 and Tier 3 nations and their development and the growth. And it is good to see nations like Brazil, Spain, for example, and Samoa in the women's game reach this level. I think it is fantastic that we're seeing this growth. It's a shame, obviously, on a Pacific Island nation point, that Tonga isn't there. That is a shame, but the Pacific Island nations and some of these other Tier 2 and Tier 3 nations don't have the finance behind them that some of the Tier 1 established nations do, especially in the women's game. And the player depth is less. Now, it's still going to be fun. There's a lot of potential upsets here and banana skins here. We are going to see some big nations go home at the pool stage, and then there will be a discussion about where certain nations are at. I think Australia are under a lot of pressure to get results. I think Wales, depending on how their tournament goes, there's going to be a lot more questions about the Welsh Union and the state of Welsh rugby's finances, for example. France, Italy and South Africa, that's just going to be a fun pool. That's just going to be fun. And Brazil, obviously, they're on a learning curve and a development curve, and they're just trying to develop the game in South America and grow the game in South America. So for Brazil, this is they've got no pressure on them. They can just go enjoy the tournament and grow the game. Pool C, the other three nations other than New Zealand, Ireland, there's pressure on Ireland to get out of the pool stage and at least make the knockout stages and try and bounce back from a disappointing few years for the women's team. But it's going to be fun. I just wish World Rugby and the tournament organisers had got more promotion going at this stage. Now, you could argue in part the Women's Euros has dominated. The Lions Tour has been quite dominant as well in the sports headlines. We've had the FIFA Club World Cup. So a lot of other major sporting events have been sort of dominating the sports media at the moment and the sports broadcasters at the moment. I understand that, and advertisers and sponsors as well have been sort of drawn to these competitions with their sponsorship and investment. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. I like International Rugby Union. It's going to be fun to see the quality on the field, and the growth in the women's game has been there. And there's been a debate about women's funding and grassroots and rugby in general, rugby union in general, about the sports financial state and the competitive imbalance with certain nations and certain unions really struggling and other nations really developing really well. And let's not have that discussion. Let's just focus on the nations that have made it, and let's have a fun tournament to watch. But thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the Women's Rugby World Cup, and what do you think? Pool A, will Australia make it out? Will they tumble at the pool stage? If they tumble at the pool stage, there's going to be a massive post-mortem back down under. Canada, can they actually be a dark horse? Can they make a final? Can they upset New Zealand or England at some point? I mean, that's going to be really interesting. And France, Italy and South Africa, I mean, who makes it out of Pool D? Because again, if, let's say, France or Italy or South Africa don't make it, there's going to be questions about why. Because especially with France and Italy, they're very evenly matched, more so than people realise. South Africa, it's just religion in South Africa, and they've got some good talent. They've got a very good Sevens programme as well. So we shall see. But thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.